We are talking self-talk. If you're afraid of silence and you're afraid of sitting there with your thoughts, then I think this might be a very, very good show for you. How much do you want to encourage and support and love when you communicate with yourself when you're feeling vulnerable?
The thing that I was trying to fix about me wasn't really something to fix.
Maybe you just need to understand and know yourself and know that voice and know the thoughts and understand that that's you.
You may notice a tendency to motivate yourself and encourage yourself by beating up on yourself. Well, guess what? That's actually not going to help you long term learn to have a peaceful, nourishing environment where you enjoy living on this planet.
Everything starts with your breath and how you can control these things with your breath.
I believe that we are actually born with a manual, and the manual is internal.
Welcome to the Good Life.
Welcome everybody to the Good Life Visual Audio Podcast. I'm Chris. I got the guys here with me. Say what's up, Stu.
What's up, y'all?
Kabi, say what's up.
What up, doe?
Guys, we are here again, always diving into the ways to design your life with extraordinary health, wealth, and mindset. Again, find us everywhere that you would check out your podcast and also on YouTube. And we're going to dive into today's episode, which is number 54. Stu, I'll pass it over to you because today it's your topic, man. What are we talking today?
We are talking self-talk. This is one of my favorite fundamentals for anybody out there trying to change what it's like to experience life. What does it feel like? Is it a pleasant experience? Is it something where you feel like if you are off on your own in a silent room, is it an enjoyable moment? That to me is the ultimate barometer. If you're afraid of silence and you're afraid of sitting there with your thoughts, then I think this might be a very, very good show for you, because the goal is to be one with your thoughts, to be able to flow. Kabi just introduced us to the ever so present topic of being able to flow like water. Are you able to flow with your thoughts? Do you have control over them? And so I think this is for everybody out there that's trying to work on their self-talk, also known as the inner dialogue. So really where I want to start today is just asking a question. This will be rhetorical for now. What is your relationship with your inner dialogue, with your self-talk? It's for everybody out there. That's a general way to just check in. Like, are you aware of it? Are you also aware that your thoughts and emotions are not you? Like there's a lot going on here. And I spent most of my life not even recognizing that I am a completely separate individual than the thoughts and emotions that occur in me. And that is a very strange topic to those of you that have always written off the spiritual side of things as woo-woo. But I promise you, if you want to be an excellent leader, family man, just show up in all the different areas of life to the best of your ability. Understanding your self-talk and how you speak to yourself is massive. So where are we going to go with this throughout this episode? First, I'm going to go ahead and just rattle off what I think are the most important things for you guys to think about here. So to start, how to analyze your self-talk. All right, so the first thing, there's three parts to this. The first thing is, what is the tone? When you are sitting there with your thoughts and you go through the day, what is the tone? It's going to change. Is there an average thing? Is it a positive charge, a negative charge? Is it encouraging? Is it, what really goes on? Is it this stick type thing where you're beating yourself up, or is it a carrot where you're incentivizing yourself? 2, what is the word choice? Words mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. Those that know me know I'm pretty much a sailor when it comes to how I talk. I could use the F word in a variety of different ways. How I use it is really based on my own speech patterns and what works for me. And analyzing the words that you decide to apply to yourself can be super powerful. I know people that are out there saying all kinds of just harsh things on themselves to get themselves to change out of a stress, out of a berating type motion. And there are others that are very peaceful and forgiving with themselves. Where do you fall in that spectrum? And oftentimes you'll realize that whether it's the tone or the word choice, those are two great ways to start by just analyzing what are these thoughts and emotions that are coming through. Because once you analyze them, you can begin to make adjustments, but you can't do that until you understand your patterns and your triggers. And the third thing, so we got tone, word choice. The third thing is the result. What is the resultant emotion that comes from how you talk to yourself? What is the resultant action that comes from how you talk to yourself? So the result is pivotal. If you spend time thinking to yourself and talking and just spending time listening to your thoughts, do you feel more motivated? Do you feel happier? Do you feel stressed out? Do you feel anxious? Do you cave under pressure? And now all of a sudden you don't do what you wanted to do all day because your thoughts have gotten to you. Tone, word choice, result. That's three places to start when it comes to analyzing your self-talk, because you can't make a change in what it's like to experience your headspace and your dialogue until you understand it. So, leads you to the next question. What can you do to actually change it? Number one, let it out. This is the most commonly known piece when it comes to trying to change your inner dialogue. When I say let it out, there's two things. You can either talk about it, therapist, coach, confidant. That could be a close friend, a close family member, somebody you feel safe expressing these things to. Second thing is a journal where you don't need anybody. It's the ultimate independent way to put your thoughts on paper, look at them, visualize them, see them, slow what's going down. For those of you that are watching this that deal with overwhelm and anxiety, slow what's going down up here by forcing your hand to write it out. Typing notes on like a digital platform. Yes, you get to see what you wrote, but the thing is, you don't get the same feeling as taking your thoughts and having them go through your body onto a page where you're forced to slow down and really process it all. They're full sentences is my recommendation, so that way you can begin to articulate what's going on. Jordan Peterson is an excellent reference on how important it is to learn how to read and write so you can think better. Well, if you want to think better, I would say read, expose yourself to new ideas, and even more importantly, in this case, let it out. Write it out. Get it in front of you. So what can you do to change it? Number one, let it out. Number two, get comfortable with silence. This idea of silence has always been fascinatingly powerful for me because I used to avoid it like the plague. I used to always dive into video games, to stimulus, to just having to have somebody else around me. And for an only child in the woods, I would do anything I can to stay away from quiet. There's plenty of opportunity in the middle of the woods, I promise you. Now, what are some of the benefits to getting comfortable with silence? What do I really mean by that? I mean getting comfortable listening to your thoughts. What happens when there's no screen in front of you? What happens when no one else is around? When you have no music playing? That is when you begin to really force yourself to deal with what's happening in my head. What are my thoughts? What are my emotions? Time alone is really what we're going for here. And what are some examples of this? You can find a beach, a mountain, park bench, hot tub, walks alone, runs or workouts without music. You can find a variety of these things. But time alone with nothing coming in, cut the noise, as Kabir says. Cut it all out. Get comfortable. So that way the only thing that's happening is you getting present in the moment and listening to what's going on up here. If you don't take the time to practice this, to practice listening and getting comfortable with your thoughts, how could you ever analyze it? How could you ever get better at it? This is a fundamental thing. Silent meditation is a very powerful thing you can do. So far, what can you do to change it? Let it out, get comfortable with silence. Number 3, determine where the pressure is coming from. This one becomes a little bit more abstract if you're new to therapy, coaching, or just thinking about your thoughts. Oftentimes there's verbiage around overthinking. Don't think about your thoughts. You're just going to make everything complicated. Well, if you don't really like what's going on in your head right now, thinking about your thoughts is the way to burst through that wall and actually begin to experience what it's like to get present and to get comfortable with what's happening in your head. So determine where this pressure is coming from. And sometimes you may be able to associate it with a voice. Maybe when you go to play video games and you feel some type of shame about doing this thing that you love, maybe that shame is coming from someone outside of you. Maybe someone that has tried to raise, condition, or program you. Maybe it's a parent. Maybe when you feel shame about going out to have a drink because perhaps you were raised by a extremely religious background where alcohol was completely forbidden. Maybe you have shame around that. Where does that voice come from? Anytime you don't like or even do like a certain part of how you're talking to yourself, here's your invitation to try and figure out where that came from. Was it a parent, a partner, an ex, a sibling? Perhaps it was a teacher, a role model, or perhaps it was just society, something you picked up in marketing. Maybe there's one thing that you hung on to since you were 13 years old that has never left you because you saw it in a commercial and you were like, dang, that's how I got to talk to women if I want them? Okay, I'm doing that from now on, here on out, period. No questions asked. Go back in time and figure out where this pressure, where this voice is coming from. By determining the source, you can determine whether or not you align with that person or society's priorities. If you're hoping to find a monogamous, healthy relationship, and I'll take the perspective for the men out there for the moment, it works both ways, I promise you, but for the men who are hoping to have a healthy, monogamous relationship with a woman, with a partner for the rest of your life, there might have been things you learned as a kid on how to pick up girls, how to slay, whatever the terminology you want to throw out there. Guess what? That might not actually be the right thing on how to actually develop a healthy, emotional, spiritual, intellectual relationship. So some of the things you might have learned early on can really like pick up and just affect and get in the way. So determine the source and determine if their priorities align with you. Do you want that source's opinion in this area? Is it a helpful guide or is it a source of shame in something that you are naturally drawn to? Let's see. So number 4, we've got right now, let it out, get comfortable with silence, determine where the pressure is coming from. Number 4, walk with your inner child. What do I mean by this? Now, this is even more abstract than the first one for those that have never done any type of inner child work before. We're talking about using your imagination to change the way you talk to yourself. Right now, you see yourself in a certain way. You know, I see myself right now as a 30-year-old life and business coach, XX and X. I've got all these narratives, all these stories about me. Let's rewind in time. Let's say I was back in construction where you are in a place where you don't necessarily like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you don't like your career. Maybe you don't like the relationship you're in. Maybe you just don't even like yourself. You may notice a tendency to motivate yourself and encourage yourself by beating up on yourself. Well, guess what? That's actually not going to help you long-term learn to have a peaceful, nourishing environment where you enjoy living on this planet. If you're continuously, if you've learned from a parent or a coach a very aggressive way to talk to yourself and that's all you apply, it's always stick, no carrot. There's nothing warm or encouraging about that. It's going to make it really tough for you to enjoy this experience because when you're alone, all you have is your voice, which is where getting comfortable with silence comes into play here. So what do I mean by walking with your inner child? I want you to imagine, and anybody watching this, just close your eyes for a moment. I want you to imagine you at 5 years old. And I want you to imagine it so clearly and powerfully that you can see what you're wearing. You can remember the type of like playful spirit. You just remember how warm and open and just playful it's like. Now, if you at 5 years old were learning how to ride a bike or whatever you're learning at 5, and you fall down, you hurt yourself, are you going to want somebody to come in and just berate you and tell you all the things that are wrong with you and tell you all these narratives and how they've made you a certain type of way and how you're never going to make it? That's not going to help a 5-year-old, and that's not going to help you at whatever age you're at. So anytime you have a negative emotion and you're speaking harshly to yourself and you're feeling some type of shame, visualize yourself as that 5-year-old, as that inner child, whatever visualization and age really resonates with you. And I want you to take that person for a walk. Go out, take them for a walk, and I want you to speak in a calm, encouraging, forgiving way, just like a parent or older sibling would do if they really care about them in like a healthy, communicative way. If you're not familiar on how to do that, I encourage you to do some research. Maybe talk to somebody. Chris right here already has a young one. Like find somebody that has a parent, that has a child, and learn to like just from them on how to speak to yourself, because the way that you speak to yourself at 5 years old can be exactly with compassion. By applying the compassion, the encouragement, the forgiveness, and the motivation of a warm, encouraging, and positive energy exchange, that is what allows people to grow and feel comfortable doing what they want, not doing what they should, or shamed, or whatever else may be. Finally, things not to do. Escapism. Escapism, escapism, escapism. What do I mean by this? If you don't like the way you speak to yourself, if you don't like the way your bank account looks, if you don't like what the doctor tells you when you go in to get a checkup, or you don't like your health in general, you cannot change these things by avoiding them. So escapism would be the number one thing I would encourage you guys to avoid. This could be drinking, a substance, overindulging in screen time. Allow yourself to sit with the silence and your thoughts and understand them, and everything we've talked about before, from getting comfortable with silence to just journaling to determine where the pressure's coming from. I promise you, everything goes into being present to your thoughts. You try and escape them, the problem will not solve, just like your health won't, just like your bank account won't. So that's what I have for you guys today. Quick recap. Self-talk overview. What is your relationship with your inner dialogue? Are you even aware that your thoughts and emotions are not you? You have the power to change them. They do not define you. Start by analyzing your self-talk, tone, word choice, the resultant emotion or action. You can change it by letting it out, getting comfortable with silence, determine where the pressure is coming from, and walking with your inner child. Avoid escapism, get present to it, or else, just like anything else, if you don't water it and focus on it, it will not change. So, gentlemen, that's my value out. I'd love to hear any type of questions you guys have about it.
It's a lot of value, man. It's a lot of value. It's a whole lot of value.
Appreciate you, brother.
I got a few things that came to mind as you were chatting. Some things that were very illuminating for me, and I realized that partially why they were illuminating is because I'm kind of looking at it a little from a slightly different kind of cultural background. Especially the walk with the child. So on one side, I was like, man, I don't think that's something that is really present in my culture. That's not really a thing, honestly, at all. I don't think it really would have been even a thing to even think about now if I hadn't come to America, for example. Right? That is not necessarily the language of love for a child. So I'm curious, kind of two things. One is, do you think that should be the language for a child, for regardless of the culture? And two, like how much of any of this do you think is cultural?
I'm sure a lot of what I'm talking about is heavily influenced by my culture. I do think there are a lot of differences. When you say how to talk to a child, like when I list off the words like compassionate, warm, encouraging, are those the type of things that don't seem to resonate with the childhood experiences of your culture?
Yes and no. And I appreciate that you went back to the words. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of like, I think every child would like to feel a connection to their parents, but in that is the way that is expressed, or what is seen as qualifies as compassionate. Um, whatever the other words that you use. Um, it's like, well, oh, that's just dad making sure that I don't mess anything up because he
Mm.
loves me, right? Whereas in another way, it might be like, oh, that's dad being an a-hole, right? And I think I see that and that switch or whatnot. And I'm wondering, are there particular actions that, regardless of where it's done or what culture it's seen in, that would be compassionate, and are there some actions that would be fall in the other category regardless?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, there are some cultures. Let's go to an extreme. There are some cultures that support the spanking of a child. There are some that see it as this crazy abhorrent thing that we will never ever do. And it's up to you, I think, to figure out what is the balance between the carrot and the stick. How much do you want to encourage and support and love when you communicate with yourself when you're feeling vulnerable, which is where the inner child exercises really come into play. Honestly, what do you seem to thrive in? If these words of this warmer nature don't necessarily resonate because you come from a background of okay, when dad's being a dick, dad's being a real dick because he's trying to get me to not mess up. He's literally, like, from the outside perspective, surface level, he's kind of being an asshole. However, what is his intention? His intention is to help me grow, etc. So I think with this particular exercise, when I talk about the warmth that you give to yourself, it's for those who have a tough time having balance. If you're always beating yourself up, if you're always being an asshole to yourself, when do you have forgiveness and grace and compassion towards yourself? I think balance is key because there are definitely times, and I think men can relate to this a lot, especially in a athletic environment or something as harsh as a construction or military environment. Sometimes we thrive when we talk shit to ourselves. So the question is, are we able to go back and forth? Are we able to actually stop and love ourselves in a warm way? Because you can show love in that harsh, jolting manner. And a lot of us have experienced some part of that. But chances are there were also times where maybe from time to time your father or your mother were compassionate, they were warm. So it's a bit of a balance because when we start to get into cultural differences and also the differences between different families, we're actually talking a little bit about generational cycles. Do you wish to parent and speak to your children the same way that you were parented and spoken to? Is the balance something that you want to tweak? Was the balance spot on? And I think that's a question we all have to ask ourselves. I think I know I can probably say, in my own opinion, I think my mom was incredibly over the top warm with me all the time. My dad was on a bit more of the other side of things. Together, as a unified front, I got some level of balance. I would have liked to have seen more balance from each one of them, but that's just a lesson learned that I have. So I think at the end of the day, the way I structured the exercise is if you speak to yourself with that compassionate sense, that would be a really great exercise for those who struggle to talk to themselves with compassion. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think you brought up some really good thoughts to think about. Do you want to repeat or do things exactly the same way? I think probably most people would say no. Most people would have some sort of tweak that they want to make. And I think that's just the nature of life, right? The double helix of DNA, right? It's never going to go straight up.
Yeah. And I think oftentimes what I've noticed is things can potentially go wrong when someone wants to do the exact opposite. If your childhood was like relatively solid, there were a couple of things here and there. If you make a massive tweak, you have to understand that with each parenting methodology, there are pros and cons. pros and cons, balance all the time. Being aware of the pros and cons and how you were raised can help you be aware of the pros and cons and how you want to raise your own kids.
Such an important conversation, Stu. I'm glad you're bringing it up. Just even on the parenting side of things, it's something I deal with and I struggle with because I'm aware of how I was parented and how my wife was parented. But when you try to switch things up, you actually don't know how your child will turn out because of the changes, right? Like, you know how you turned out because of one side. But if you don't do that or you go the other way, you actually don't know what that outcome is. So it still gives you some of that fear that causes you to go back to kind of how you were raised. And I see this happening in my own life. So that's just a good point to bring up. Question for you though: when do you think people should be aware of their inner voice or like their inner dialogue and how they're talking to themselves? Like, is this something a child should, and we don't have to use those shoulds, but like a child can pick up and it makes sense for them? Is this for sure an adult thing? And what's your take on when we should pay attention to this inner dialogue?
I like how you had some hesitancy with the word should, because I can tell you there are things that my buddies have figured out about one area of life 5, 10, 15 years before I did. And there are things that I've figured out seemingly before them. Like, everybody has a different track on this. I would say I probably got a really good grasp on how to speak to myself in a combination of the carrot and the stick. I would say I lean much more so to the carrot because I just spent way too much time with the stick. And I probably found a good balance for me where I enjoy day-to-day life, no matter what's going on around me, about within the last 2 years, and I'm 30. I would like our society to begin talking about these things. I don't know why psychology has to be this thing you go off and study in college. I think why don't we know how the human mind works? Why aren't we educated on this? Probably starting around like middle school. I think once you hit about middle school, maybe I don't know, I would say start as young as possible. In America, which is where I've spent most of my time, I have some influence from Australia. I would say that people begin focusing on this extremely rarely. I know people anywhere from 70s and 80s to probably like teens and 20s. Less than 5% seem to give a lot of time to this, a lot of time to practice, a lot of attention. It is not common in Western culture, can't speak for others, to dive in and ask these things to yourself. We're not taught it in school. We're not taught it at work. I think the only time where we begin to touch on this is why we have these like personality tests at work and we have these different management things where the end goal is productive employees. That is not my goal when it comes to inner dialogue. My goal when it comes to inner dialogue is, am I able to enjoy the experience of life and make progress on the things that are important to me? So, super long-winded answer. I would like people to begin having these conversations when their kids are able to make complete sentences. They don't have to comprehend all of it, just like they don't have to comprehend calculus. But you start talking to them about 1, 2, and 3. Why can't we start talking to them about emotional awareness? Kids are really good at telling you when they're upset. Are they good at telling you what emotion they're having? Are they good at telling you what specifically triggered an emotion? Are they good at guiding themselves out of an emotion? I think these are things that we could begin talking to kids about between 5 to 10. And I think maybe around middle school, you could actually see it in education systems.
I love that. And I think it's so true too. It's just we posted something on my Instagram. I don't know if you guys posted also that Jay Shetty clip, and he talks about being a monk and seeing this over in India, I believe, where he said he saw this young kid monk, right, like a 10-year-old or something, teaching other kids for their first day of school about breath. And he was surprised by it, and he was like, learning from this little 10-year-old kid teaching other kids about breath and how important it is. And the kid kind of asked him back or something along the lines of like, what did you learn? Like, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s. He's like, yeah, that's what I learned. And he's like, but these kids are learning how everything starts with your breath and how you can control, right, these things with your breath, and that instilling that early, where we might not get this until we're in our teens, 20s, 30s, is, you know, one of the things that obviously, you know, helps these kids really understand the important part and the thing that they, you know, can actually control in their life. So I think the earlier the better. I think you're right on that point.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that resonates. Sorry, go ahead, Kabir.
So I think, you know, kind of going back and combining, Chris, what you just said with the idea of the cultural piece as well. And that's kind of partly where I was going with it. I'm curious, you know, if these problems, quote unquote problems, don't even exist in other paradigms, right? And, you know, with my study of just a little of just looking at Eastern philosophy, of just looking at Eastern ways of living, it occurred to me that some of these things that we end up, and I'll say use finger quotes for those that are listening on podcast here, solve or fix later in life don't even exist because there's a totally different paradigm. And what I mean by that, for example, is a child realizing young that that inner dialogue is not even real,
Yeah.
doesn't even exist.
Yeah.
So why fix that? There's nothing to fix. And
Mm.
Chris, I think you have something to say to that. I'm curious what you have to say.
No, I was just literally gonna basically second that side of things. That, like, that inner dialogue is not even them, right? It's not normally them. It's external things that they heard, and getting a child to understand that outside of this paradigm, you're right. It probably doesn't. It may not even exist. So, yeah, I was just seconding that side.
I love the pattern here of the cultural piece, because I think you couldn't be any farther from the truth. You take one of those monks, and maybe all they've been doing is studying the breath and how to live. I'm sure this is going to be like an ignorant summary, but you know, how to live like a very peaceful, like just meaningful, present life. You try and plop them over here and tell them to produce. You're not going to know. Just like you try and take somebody over here and put them over there, it's going to be a massive culture shock. So really the question becomes, what kind of life are you going for? Are we attempting to educate our kids here in the West just to become producers who don't understand their thoughts, can't think for themselves? Over there, are they attempting to do basically the complete opposite? And what type of society do we want to live in? What type of society do we want humanity to go towards? So I think the cultural piece is huge. Everything I said about warmth applies to those perhaps that had a similar background to me. But if you feel like there's harshness and you want more balance, that's a great way to bring that in. If perhaps you were raised in a totally opposite culture where it's about enjoying the present moment and not about producing, perhaps you actually have to, bring in this other idea of like, what is it like to like be my own stick? What is it like to speak harshly to myself, to get me hyped, to be like, dude, you got this, like no more fucking around, like this is what you got to do today. Maybe you need more of that. So either way, play with the spectrum, play with balance, depending on what your nature is and where you'd like to go. Recognize that it's not black and white. It's not all on harsh or all on soft. It's find yourself on the balance and recognize different times of the day, different situations require different part of that spectrum.
Solid, man. That's solid. I don't know if Kabir, you had any other questions. I would love for Stu to kind of elaborate a bit more on the ways to let it out, because I know you mentioned journaling, but when you start to realize your inner dialogue, what I feel like there's a process of letting people getting it out, right? You know what I mean? Like understanding how negative that self-talk is, right? And actually getting it out there. So like give the people a couple things of like, how do you really let it out, and what maybe might they be feeling if they're trying to let it out and it's not working for them.
There's like a writer's block that can occur with journaling. That seems to be the number one reason why people don't start journaling and make it a habit. Um, you have all these ideas. Like let's go with this writer's block analogy. You have all these ideas to write a book. There's just they're flooding in. It's too much. All of a sudden it's dry. You've like taken yourself out of your flow state, and you're trying to like make this thing some type of process. I would say when it comes to anyone that's for the very first time, no matter what age you are, no judgment. You know, I've got a range of clients from like 17 to 54 right now who work on some of these fundamentals. Does not matter. No matter where you're at, if you are just now beginning to realize that your inner dialogue is a thing that is not you, it's fantasy, it's made up, it's totally separate. I would say step one, spend time in silence. I think I began to make the most strides when I moved to South Florida, and I did not really have any close friends when I first got here. Like that meant I spent a lot of time alone. I did have a lot of escapist tendencies. I would dive into video games. I would try and go out and socialize and be around music and people and things like that. But you can't do that all the time. You go broke. I don't care what you're doing. So eventually I go for a workout and then I sit in the hot tub. And dude, there's something about like the white noise of like the water and things like that in like a hot tub where you're just sitting back and you have nothing else to think about except your thoughts. Like that's all you can hear. I think start by just spend time not running away from it. And then from there, you can begin to play with those things. Then transition into journaling or talking to somebody about it. And oftentimes, talking to somebody about your thoughts gets harshly labeled as gossip, because a lot of times before you've begun to finally like heal, you're very affected by the people around you. So everything that's going on in your world is somebody else's fault. Diane at work, God, I can't stand that chick. Like just at least begin to talk about it. There's a lot of like things saying don't gossip, but sometimes if that's what's like rampantly on your mind, allow that out to someone where it's safe, where you're not going to start spreading people's business, and you can just begin to just talk about what's going on in your head. You allow another person to bring their sounding board, to bring a third party perspective. So now you can begin to identify like, oh shit, okay, I'm this one person. I have this thought stream. I'm gonna air this out to where somebody else can come in and give me another perspective on it. Now you're looking at it from two angles. And then from there, you can begin to problem solve. Do I really think Diane's the problem with like why my marriage is screwed up at home? Or like, who knows? Like you'll just begin to realize that a lot of this stuff doesn't make any sense. We make all these assumptions that we take them for true until you tell somebody else about it and they give you a different perspective. And you're like, dude, how did I come up with that assumption? So I would say start with silence, start talking about it with somebody else, and then go to journaling. That's how it worked for me. I think there are plenty of other people that are so against opening up that I would say start with journaling. And if you're feeling that writer's block around journaling, just literally, I only free write when I journal. I don't do prompts. I know a lot of people that do prompts. That's cool. I'm really hoping that works for you. It doesn't really work for me that well. I title, it's either morning, afternoon, or evening journal. I put the date, and then I start writing. If I can't think of something to write, I'll literally write. I can't think of anything to write. There has to be something on my mind. Next thing you know, like I just go in. Like just there was this writer that was asked, how did you come up with all these different books throughout your lifetime? And he said, I forced myself to write 500 words a day. Like not just blah, 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 but like something with a little bit more thought than that. And all of a sudden things will flow from there. It's a very natural process. I think that might be some of the entryway into this work.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, man. I think you definitely laid out quite a bit of like I said in the beginning, a lot of value for some folks to pick up and go to work on. Um, and I to add, or share my experience from my perspective and what's worked for me. And we can all agree that not everything we share works for everybody for sure. Um,
Facts.
so there's a few things that, as that I look at my life and I look at where I am now and some things that I've tried. Avid journaler, uh, really resonate with the noise piece, as you may or may not know. That so much so that I literally am building an entire brand around it. Right. So I do believe in that strongly, and that it's cut the noise around us, because a whole lot of everybody has an antidote. Everybody has the answer. Everybody has a way of telling you what is right for you, and or telling me what is right for me and what I should be doing, what I could do. Right, blah, 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 blah. And at some point in my life, I found that it wasn't helpful to continue to listen to that stuff. It was, I believe that we are actually born with a manual, and the manual is internal. And you could either find it, search it external. That's a very real way to go about it. But you could also go internal and find the same answers that you're looking for, that I'm looking for. And for me, I realized that for me was a better path. So I was never one to, I was actually running towards the silence. I was never running away from the silence. I was always running towards it. I was always going internal, because there was points in my life where that is the only place I could go, was internal. All right. As soon as I left my childhood home and came, like, everything around me was foreign. Everything around me was foreign. So the only place I could go was internal to seek for my answer. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Maybe something that I'm saying will resonate. Maybe something that Stu just said will resonate. I think that, like I said, there's a lot of different people out there. So my thing is, journaling, meditation, like I said, cut the noise and focus, follow one path until successful. But all of those things I tried at some point in time, and I still do many of them. Like, it's many, many, many of them. The thing that really made the difference for me was a paradigm shift of realizing that, or coming to a place where the thing that I was trying to fix about me wasn't really something to fix.
Hmm.
Right. So I think that's what I'm trying to get across when I say what I'm saying, is that I realized that maybe there isn't a problem. Maybe I can just observe all the wild, weird, crazy, loud noises that are in my head and the voice in my head, and just let it be. Maybe that's just all it is. Right. And for me, that was a major breakthrough, in that I could have whatever it is, get on the phone with my dad, and whatever it is comes up, oh man, this, that, oh God, blah, blah, blah. And that's just what it is. And just sit with it, or sit apart from it and watch it. All right. So for me, I think, maybe there's somebody out there who they've tried the journaling, they've tried the self-talk, they've tried a lot of that stuff, and it hasn't stuck. Um, Maybe this perspective would help you, that there's nothing to fix, that you can just sit with whatever it is that you need to sit with, and it just simply is what it is. It's neither good or bad. So yeah, I'm curious what you guys think of that. I think that's been my experience and kind of what I've been through, but obviously not everybody's.
That was beautifully put, man. Really, like the theme of self acceptance, and maybe I'm not broken, maybe I don't have to adhere to whatever is going on around me. You use that word fix. That's, interestingly enough, been a theme throughout my entire day today, whether it was a live, a session, a connection call, whatever. The word fix keeps coming up. There's like this underlying, almost dark natured tone that seems to come about when we view ourselves and we think about who we should be, And clearly, if we're not who we should be, which is this made up thing in our mind, we must be broken. We must need fixing. There must be a solution to make us be this other thing. And I'm really glad you shared that perspective. I think that's spot on. Like at the end of the day, every single person is different. There's going to be things out there on the internet or in this podcast that resonate with you and things that do not. They are options for you to consider, for you to broaden your horizon. So, bro, I got nothing. You just nailed that. It was very well put.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll second that. Also, Stu, for could be maybe you're again this notion of like we have to fix something. Maybe there's nothing to fix, right? It's just you, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Self-mastery, top need, self-awareness, right? Knowing oneself. Maybe you just need to understand and know yourself and know that voice and know the thoughts and understand that like that's you. If that's hindering you from doing something you want to do, then that's probably where we're having the conversation about what Stu's talking about and how to change some of that. But if it's not hindering you from getting to where you want to be, then that's you. You should embrace it. I believe that I follow that 1,000%. And I think that helps us figure out our course a bit better. If you just are confident in hearing your voice. I was overhearing this at a restaurant I was at where a lady was saying like, I don't trust my judgment anymore. I'm like, well, that's a tough place to be, right? Like, you don't trust your own judgment. You don't trust your picker. You don't trust like how you think about things. Well, then who do you trust? That means you're going to start trusting other people. That means you're going to trust outside, like external things to tell you that. And I think that's what we're dealing a lot with. And we can flip it all around by, again, knowing our own inner dialogue and knowing that voice so we can trust ourselves. So I follow.
Stu, I got a question for you, and but Chris, actually, for not actually, but from my perspective, actually, I don't think that's you. I think that may be part of you, maybe, but I don't even know if I can identify what who is that? Because when I listen to that voice, that voice isn't me, because that voice says some things that where did that come from? That wasn't me. Right. So I'm not sure that I think that's kind of what I'm saying. I'm not sure that is me. That may be. I don't know what that is. I have no idea what that is. But to your second point, I don't think it's necessarily it. Is it a problem? Is it not a problem? Is it hindering you? Is it not hindering you? Well, it's kind of like when you're with somebody that's like, it's just like, I don't have a good analogy. Let me just say that. I don't have a good analogy. I was going for it. I don't have anything. But what I was going to say is kind of like maybe as a really good basketball player, right? When you start playing, that ball is like, you notice it. It's like there. It's like, I got something here. When you get really, really, really good, I would imagine, because I can't hoop worth anything, I would imagine that you don't notice it anymore. That ball isn't necessarily you, but it feels like it's just there. I do whatever I do with it, right? That's the way I'm kind of seeing it, right? So I and not necessarily to say that anything that's been said is wrong or incorrect, but just to offer my perspective. That's why we're here, right? To offer our thoughts. And yeah, and if anything you guys have to say about that, definitely go for it. But Stu, my question for you is, if somebody wants to dive a little bit deeper, are there any resources, any books, any YouTube videos, anything like that that they can maybe dive into a little bit more?
Diving deeper into self-talk, what resources are there?
I'll jump in really quick because I actually know one that I give to people. It's called What You Say When You Talk to Yourself by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. It's a mouthful. What You Say When You Talk to Yourself by Dr. Shad Helmstetter. That is a book on inner dialogue, self-talk that I've read, that I've given to people that definitely can help identify some of those things. So There's one.
Thank you for that. I would say I'm going to go with 3 different book recommendations, but I'm going to put this out there to literally everybody. If you find someone that excites you and stimulates the way you think about how you speak to yourself on Instagram, on YouTube, on social media in general, follow that person. And every time you follow one of those people, unfollow somebody that takes you away from learning something or cultivating like a higher energy or a higher self view. These things are huge, like just little differences. Like, so when you wake up and you accidentally scroll through your phone, or when you go to bed and you accidentally scroll through your phone, you get some type of image, quote, audio, whatever, that just has you think about your dialogue. This is how I made massive strides, because I recognize that, yeah, I'm on social media a good amount. Who can I surround myself with that makes me think about this stuff more? I would say that's a general suggestion. 3 book recommendations. 1 for general mindset type stuff. That's going to be The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. This is a quick read for those who are not big fans of, self-development books. The 4 Agreements is massive. It talks about how to be impeccable with your word, saying what you say to yourself, saying things out loud that you truly mean. It's one of the reasons why I actually became way more observant of the language people would use to me and the language I would put to other people, because these things have power. The words you use and the tone has so much power. Be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. Don't take things personally. And the 4th one slips my mind right now. Long story short, The 4 Agreements is an excellent way to begin to look at how you think. That's in general. Number 2, when it comes to relationships, I'm going to go ahead and direct this to all the guys that self-proclaim themselves to be nice guys, all the girls that self-proclaim themselves to be nice girls, any people pleasers out there. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. If you want to focus on your inner dialogue when it comes to lovers, when it comes to dating and romance, this is massive. Honestly, just relationships in general, because there are going to be things that you do for people that neither one of you have verbalized, and you have an expectation that they return the energy because I don't know. What's a good example? You take out the trash every Saturday for your neighbor across the street because maybe you don't like looking at it and you're trying to do them a favor. They never asked you to do this. Maybe it's for your partner. Maybe it's for your roommate. You always take out the trash. When are they going to do something for you? Well, guess what? This was never verbalized. You never actually had some type of agreement on this. So when it comes to relationships, No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. And then I would say when it comes to your inner dialogue in a social capacity, my absolute favorite of all time, because it's a fun read as well as a self-development read, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. I cannot recommend this book enough.
I was going to guess you were going to say that, bro. I was about to say it before you said it, but I was like, I know
it before you said it.
I knew it.
This book changes lives.
Totally. It's a great book.
It will get you excited about self-development books.
And shout out to Alexis also recommending Outwitting the Devil, another quality read. If you haven't read that Napoleon Hill Outwitting the Devil, I've listened to it on audio. It's probably like a 6-hour audio, but it's great for long road trips. Man, the stuff that book was written in the early 1900s, and all of the principles in that book are still relevant to today. So thank you for that, Alexis. We appreciate it. And
shout out.
Yeah, for everybody that is watching on YouTube, we just put the banner up to sign up for our email list. If you go to this page, we actually have all of our book recommendations on there. Stu has his book recommendations. I have mine. Kabi has his, all on this page. It also gives you the ability to sign up for our email list. So we'll type it and pin it here in the Instagram chat just for the rest of this. But for those of you watching, you can go to that link, sign up for the email list, and at the same time see all of the book recommendations that we have that will definitely help you on this process and in this journey of self-improvement, self-development. All right.
Preach. Amen. So, any other questions before we head into our closing thoughts?
None from me, sir.
And I'm good also.
All right. So, gentlemen, takeaways from today. Let's fire them off.
I'll go ahead and roll out first. So for me, one thing I learned today was to take some time to analyze how it is that you are treating yourself in that inner dialogue, and to cut the noise. Gosh darn it. I think that's incredibly important. Thank you for bringing that up. And then one give I had today is to dive in with me. Health 202 workshop. I'll see you guys there, February 27th. We're taking it to the next level. I promise you, it is transformative. Nothing you have ever touched with anybody, any coach you've ever worked with before in that realm. Guaranteed.
I love it. I love it. Takeaways from today, Stu, the outline of changing that inner dialogue, something that I have been paying attention to a bunch. But the thing that resonated with me the most is just getting comfortable sitting in silence, right? Just getting comfortable sitting with your thoughts, just getting comfortable sitting with you. I'm not quick to say I used to struggle with this. I know that I haven't always been the greatest at just sitting with myself, but I never ran away from it. However, I know a lot of people that run away from it. They run away from the silence. They run away from the stillness, the just sitting down and getting comfortable with themselves and their thoughts. And that's something that, again, I just know is going to, right? It's really going to help people in this process of achieving or getting to the life that they want. It says in the scripture, right, that like we can take our thoughts captive. It says that we can take our thoughts captive. And when you think of it from that perspective of knowing that if you have the ability to take a thought captive, that means that thought is separate from you, right? And being able to sit with yourself and be comfortable in the sound, you will start to find ways to capture those thoughts and capture them and say, that's one that I don't like, and I'm going to throw that thought out. This is a thought that I do want, and I'll stick with it. And being able to discern those things, I think all comes down to being able to sit with yourself and spend that time. So thank you for making that point. That's my major takeaway from today.
Appreciate it. Glad it resonated. And I think my major takeaway from today would be the reflection that whether it's different culture or a different way in which you evolved, could be example of going internal and then potentially like looking a bit more around external. I think it's just so important to remember that like there are so many different possibilities of who you are and how you came to be. Looking at everything that is proposed here today and looking at everything that anyone ever tells you what you should do to change your life, look at it as a suggestion that is to be filtered out by you based on your experiences and what you tried before. It's just another option. You can't do all 7 billion things that all 7 billion people think you should do. Be your own coach. Think for yourself. Recognize that there may be some parts of today that landed. How can you modify them to really, really suit you and what you're going through? My big give is the announcement of the Face Your Fears project. I'm going to be launching this starting on February 28th. It's going to be a free event for those who have already become close with me. It is a trial run of sitting down, having a dry week, and dedicating your some portion of your free time on a regular basis to facing your fear. This could be a social anxiety. This could be a side hustle. This could be you already have some type of initiative, but you're afraid to go live. You're afraid to speak on camera. You're afraid to do some type of event. Maybe you're afraid to restore some type of relationship. We're going to have a group container where there's going to be accountability, and it's going to show you what it's like to actually take initiative and structure your free time to manifest what you want to manifest in this life without a boss telling you what to do and without a clock in, clock out time. This what this is for. Very much looking forward to this. If you are interested, hit me up. It's going to start on the 28th of February.
Love it. Love it. Thank you, Stu, for bringing us some knowledge today, dropping some hot ones on us. I have my bucket ready, caught a few ones, but my hands got burnt a little bit as well. So, you know what I mean? We do what we do. Guys, that's it for us today. If you guys heard anything, something that you like, please subscribe, smash that like button. Tune in next Monday for the finished product, or Wednesday live on Instagram, and share with somebody who would love or hate this episode, because all press is good press, baby. Until next time, keep living the good life. We'll see you next time. We're out of here.
Take care, y'all.
Later.